Now to the fight against ISIS here in Jordan, where warplanes are joining coalition airstrikes against ISIS. The number of bombs dropped on targets has tripled since the fall. But on the ground, stemming the tide of fighters joining the extremists is much more complex. Striking from the air, the U.S. and its allies stepping up the fight against ISIS, pounding targets across Iraq and Syria with growing ferocity. Now, the president looking to escalate even more. This week, asking Congress for more flexibility for American forces, which could soon include special forces on the ground.
Now, make no mistake, this is a difficult mission, and it will remain difficult for some time. It's going to take time to dislodge these terrorists.
Terrorists who have flooded into Syria and Iraq from around the world, including just across the Jordan-Iraq border, where ISIS flourishes. This border is where we brought the former deputy head of Central Command, Admiral Robert Harward, who spent his career tracking the entire region and fighting on the ground as a Navy SEAL. It looks like the moonscape here, but pretty easy to cross in.
Sure. You can walk, ride your camel, drive a car, ride a motorcycle. It's very simple to cross these areas of terrain.
And just disappear.
At any time you want, day or night.
And driving along the border, we saw Jordanian tanks and forces deployed as fears grow that ISIS fighters could bring the battle to Jordan. The problem, of course, is not only ISIS fighters coming this way, but fighters who want to go be with ISIS going the other way. That same fear on Jordan's northern border with Syria, where ABC's Alex Marquardt traveled.
As Jordan steps up their fight against ISIS, their jets screaming across the border, on the ground, young Jordanian men from tough, poorer towns can easily cross the border into Syria to join ISIS.
After that shocking execution of the Jordanian pilot burned alive, much of the Arab and Muslim world rallied against ISIS, known in Arabic as Daesh. Would you go fight in Syria?
If the Daesh killed our brother in Syria, yes, I will go to there.
But that execution and the coalition airstrikes have also galvanized legions of ISIS supporters. In a war situation for us, you have to understand it's an eye for an eye, this man told me when we visited the southern Jordanian city of Man, which has become fertile ground for ISIS and al-Qaeda. The people here in Man say at least 40 young men from this town have been killed in Syria of the hundreds who've gone to fight there. Religious extremism is growing in Man, an impoverished city with 25% unemployment, where many are angry and disenchanted with the king. Young men like those we met outside a mosque are also inspired to fight after watching thousands of their fellow Muslims die in Syria's 4-year-long war. Boys, the boys, would you go fight in Syria? And why?
What we watch on TV they give us the motivation to go and fight in Syria.
What is that motivates you to want to go into Syria and fight?
Syrians are our brothers, and when you see how they are being killed, you just have the motivation to go and fight.
Many of those who answered the call to jihad from Jordan have been encouraged by this man, Abu Sayyaf, a well-known radical cleric previously imprisoned for leading anti-government protests. In an interview at his home, where as a woman I was told not to sit near him or be photographed with him, he said ISIS made a mistake by burning the pilot alive, but defended sending extremist fighters to Syria. Tell us why you want to send fighters to Syria.
When the Syrian people call upon all Muslims to support them, we in the Salafi Jihadi movement answered this call, and this is for the sake of God that we went to fight in Syria.
A fight, he said, that men and women are willing to face prison for or death. We're back now with Admiral Bob Harward and our own Alex Marquardt, who has spent so many years covering this region. Admiral Harward, I want to start with you. We heard the president this week request more troops if necessary, and they're talking about special operations troops this time, not a massive ground troop movement.
Well, they know special operations forces can identify the leadership, identify the financial support and the logistics, and go after and get them. And so that's what we're going to do here.
And those are the smaller units using drones, it's not just an air campaign. You have to go in there.
That's exactly right. And look, we have an Arab coalition that wants to be proactive and engaged. They're part of the air campaign now. They'll be part of that broader campaign as well.
And Alex, you've been watching this. You've been in Syria. You've been all over this region. This is a very, very different fight than, say, Afghanistan.
It is. It's not a conventional war like we've seen in Afghanistan, Iraq, or even Libya. And the administration is clearly looking at their successes and failures in Syria and Iraq. And if you look back 5 months when the campaign started, they've carried out more than 2,300 airstrikes, and there's very little that they can point to in terms of successes. The map hasn't really changed. They were able to push the ISIS out of northern Syria and Kobani, but at the end of the day, very little has changed in terms of the territory that ISIS controls.
And one of the things they obviously say is, look, this just takes time. But we were all discussing that target list. It's vehicles, it's bulldozers, it's very small ball what they're going after.
Yeah, but I think the difference here and where they are making progress is understanding the problem, understanding who those leaders are, where they're getting their resources from, and going after that part of the problem. I think that's the evolution they've made and where we are today, and that's why I think the president's realization and what he's asking for will set the stage to get after that problem.
Alex, as you heard, I was in a small town in Jordan. Population there very supportive of ISIS. I think it's so stunning to hear people say things like that, but that's really the root of the problem too. You have 30,000 people willing to join ISIS and fight. They're not all leaders, that's for sure.
Well, absolutely. The mission is to degrade and destroy ISIS, and what we've seen is the series of execution videos, these twisted, awful videos that are horrifying to most of us, but inspiring to so many people across this region. And so as the administration goes after and kills many of these fighters in Iraq and Syria, they're still managing to recruit people from across the region and around the world. Their forces are swelling.
You heard what Alex said. You know this as well. How do you defeat that?
That's a great point, and that's been the problem. Over the last 12 years, we've been able to defeat the organization, but we haven't been able to defeat the ideology. Now, some of these recent videos where you're burning an individual in a cage, I think at the end of the day, that's going to be counterproductive and get after the ideology.
They clearly don't think that it's going to be counterproductive either. I mean, to some extent, in the short run, they did shoot themselves in the foot, because you've seen the Muslim world, the Arab world rally together, certainly here in Jordan, carrying out more airstrikes, the United Arab Emirates starting up their airstrikes again. But they really see this as a recruiting tool.
Thanks to both of you.